Welcome to the Eye of the Observer podcast, the podcast of the Observer news staff. On Eye of the Observer, we'll be interviewing the newsmakers and fascinating personalities at Elgin Community College, or sometimes we'll be talking about news or cultural topics among ourselves to inform and entertain you. As always, I'm your host, Vansh, and I'm with
Eric.
And today we're welcoming our guest, the famous advisor, Nick Obradovich. Nick, could you please introduce yourself to the audience for maybe people who don't know you?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to finally be on our podcast. My name is Nick Obradovich. I am a professor of English and journalism here at ECC for just about a little bit over 10 years, and I've been advisor to the Observer since 2015.
Oh, 2015. That makes it, 8 years? This is your 8th year as the advisor?
It does not seem that long, but it has been, yeah. I took over fall 2015.
Just a quick question. How old are you when you started? Just a general question.
How old am I?
Yeah. No, like back in 2015. 8 years ago.
I would have to do the math on that. I guess I'd have been like 36.
36? Oh, okay, that's amazing. So in your 8 years of being the advisor, have you experienced any highs or lows with the Observer's staff?
I've experienced many more highs than I have lows.
Okay.
Some of the highs, definitely this year, just as a group this fall and spring, having such a big, enthusiastic staff, doing so many different projects, getting so many awards, but really enjoying being with each other, and just engaging in all the projects we've been that's probably been my career highlight in terms of being an advisor. Lows are really just when people join the staff and then for whatever reason aren't comfortable, or they have other circumstances in their life come up where they have to leave and maybe they didn't accomplish what they wanted to. That's always sad to see. But again, we have a lot more highs in this job than lows.
And as we're on the topic of the Observer, and I guess it should be kind of customary for us, but can you explain what the Observer is and maybe in a broader sense?
Sure. Well, the Observer has been around at this school for decades and decades. I think it actually started out, it was called the Echo, and it was the student newspaper, which I guess sometimes we still refer to ourselves as that, but I prefer the term student news outlet because we don't print anymore. But we are the official news outlet, student news outlet of ECC, and what we've done for years is basically cover the news. And this has always been and will always be a student-centered news organization. So it's the students who do the reporting, do the editing, do the producing, whatever medium we're working in. It's all student-driven. I just serve as the advisor. I just try to help and advise and teach. But you all make the decisions on things we cover.
And while we're talking about things to cover, can you go into maybe a little bit of the process behind publishing and maybe writing the articles here? Because we've written a lot of articles, and as I guess staff journalists or staff writers, we only see the one-sided part where we write, we compose, and then we submit for editing. But could you talk to us about the full process of actually writing a newspaper?
Yeah, so especially folks who maybe are new to the Observer or are thinking about joining, we always sit down as a group several times a semester and we pitch ideas. And again, these are mainly ideas that you as the staff want to write about or want to report on. And then we have a team of editors who ultimately, with a little bit of input from me, but basically the editors decide which stories are going to kind of fit in with what we do, kind of fit in with our mission. And we assign stories. We assign somebody to take pictures that goes with those stories. And then reporters start the reporting process.
So, on topic with articles, what are the some successful or notable articles that you've seen been published?
Oh gosh, I don't think I've ever looked this up. I'm trying to think how many articles we've published on our website since I started. And that will tell you about how many articles I've kind of watched, go from ideas to reality here, because we started the website just a semester after I started. But some of the more notable ones, like maybe the one I'm most proud of, was written in the end of 2001. Our first editor after basically lockdown, Shelby Ann Taylor took over as editor, and she wrote a story profiling actually a student of mine who had HIV and did not really tell anyone other than his parents. I think only his family knew. He was in a class of mine. I found out about his condition. I introduced him. His name's Ernesto, and I introduced him to Shelby, and Shelby ended up writing a wonderful profile story on him that immediately I knew was a really good story. But it won a state award last year, and then last fall it actually made it as a finalist for the national award, and then at our national conference she ended up taking third in the country, which was a shock even to me. As well written as that story was, getting third for a community college writer when it was against all university level writers was that was a big a moment for me personally, just in terms of a story we did as I think I've ever been a part of here.
And I mean, when you pointed out nationals, do you think it's a big, I guess, a big deal when a community college, when contending with universities, they get third place or maybe second or fourth or first?
Yeah, I would say it almost never happens. Many of the categories at our national conferences are designated just for two-year schools, but some of the big prestigious writing ones, it's just all division. It's just whoever's work gets nominated. But if you kind of look at the previous winners of some of those, very seldom are winners from community colleges. So for us to get that far sort of exceeded my expectations. But she deserved it. She wrote a story that I would put against any college journalism story in the country.
So, with us winning awards and everything, what are the recent awards that we've won?
We're on like an incredible run right now, the likes of which I have not been associated with. We won first place at our spring 2023 national conference that you guys were both at in San Francisco. We got first place for newsletter, for our digital newsletter for two-year schools, and eighth place for the website category. Last fall, we also won eighth in website for two-year schools in Washington, D.C. So, and those are things we're even looking to improve upon. But those were like two pretty sweet awards. But that first place was not
expected.
Not expected. It was deserved. Like, you guys done such an amazing job. Pardon me, putting that together. But I didn't anticipate getting first.
Right.
I mean, first place compared to maybe universities and stuff does not sound too bad for a community college.
No, it does
I mean,
not.
just saying, we're just a little small, 13 people, 13...
On the staff, right?
Oh, yeah, we have 13 staff members, and we kind of just soar in terms of our accomplishments. I mean, I think our state awards, we kind of dominated the photography side of things. I'm pretty sure if you could expand on that a little bit more.
Absolutely. So for those who haven't seen, we... really, the awards we really put our emphasis on is our state awards through our Illinois Community College Journalism Association, ICCJA, that we're very active in that organization. And at our conference last week, hosted by College of DuPage, our editor-in-chief, Dom, won 4 photography awards. He swept first place for news photo, feature photo, sports photo, and also got another second in sports photo just on top of everything. And for someone who's going into that field as a career, photojournalism, I know he's very gratified.
Right.
And yeah.
So, like, compared to last semester and this semester, have you seen the staff improve on their writing?
Definitely. It's so fun every year if you look at the beginning of a new school year. So let's say if you look at a staff's writing in like September or October of a given year, and then look at their writing in March or April or May of the next spring, usually you could tell there's a pretty marketed difference, and that's one of the most gratifying parts of this job is you can sort of see that growth. You honestly, you could see it from beginning to the end of a semester, but when you actually look at it for the whole year, for folks who stick around for the whole year, it's super fun to see.
And I mean, you see people grow. I mean, that's kind of your job as an advisor to maybe teach and help people grow in terms of skill set, maybe how their writing skills. And do you see that more often in your current job as an English professor as well?
The growth in the writing.
Yes.
Well, I mean, ideally, we're always looking for the, growth in writing, and yeah, as a classroom instructor, certainly I see people grow. But in an environment like this, where it's a lot of, it's a smaller group, it's a lot of hands-on. Everyone comes on staff and sticks with it is generally highly motivated. Otherwise, you just probably wouldn't stick around. You see a lot more growth there, just because the motivation, you're working with your peers who are editors who are trying to help you. You're getting more individual attention from me. You take projects that mean more to you. So I think you see the growth even more here than you would in just a traditional classroom.
And I know we mentioned before, just moving past, the growing aspects of journalism, I guess, here in the newsroom, but we mentioned state awards and national awards. Could you maybe just tell us a little bit more about any other awards that we could be either
potentially win?
Sure. Well, for the state awards is a very vast group of categories. So it's not just photography. There's all sorts of different writing awards. There's podcast awards, which obviously is a newer thing. There's multimedia for those who put together stories that incorporate, let's say, video and photography. And, headline writing, just all sorts of different awards. And we actually used to be competitive as well in the design categories when we were printing a newspaper. So there's a number of design awards categories as well. So while that isn't our focus as much anymore, there's still, a dozen or so categories for us to be competitive in. And those are the ones we always look to. I'm always pushing people to, write an opinion piece, write a news piece, write a feature, human interest piece. Those have award possibilities.
So I have a question for you. So, of course, at being the advisor of the Observer, you see people come and go, right,
Mm-hmm.
regularly. I got a question. Can you explain how Vaj came into the Observer exactly, since we're now podcast hosts?
Sure. So Vanch is the case of someone who I met in my English 101 class, and I want to say, I don't know if he said this in something he wrote or he said it verbally in class, that he was interested in photography. At least that's my memory, right?
Oh yeah, I think we were either, I don't remember, but we were sharing, I think, around just like a hobby or something, and I said,
like first day stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh, I'm a photographer.
So anytime somebody says something that either I have a personal interest in, I tend to remember those students, or they have a hobby that I think might fit well with the Observer, I tend not to forget that. So I'm not sure when I approached you about joining. It may not have been that day, but if somebody says, I love writing, or I love photography, or I'm really into social media, or I want to be in communications or journalism or something, like, rest assured I'm going to reach out to them at some point. And they don't always join, or they don't join right away. But in your case, you did join like within a month, right? That's why I ask those type of questions, though, because I'm always looking for people who I think would make good fits here.
Now we're on the topic of how I joined. How did Eric join?
Oh, come on.
How did Eric get into this journalism thing?
I don't know. Didn't you just bring him with?
I was like a dog on a leash. He was like, here's Eric.
Yeah, I think it was one of the first days we met too.
It was actually.
I don't remember. We met in driver's ed, right?
Yeah, we met in driver's ed in March.
And then we went through the entire summer just texting back and forth, and then
like 2 weeks before the fall semester of 2022 started, we played video games together, and then that's what we found out. Like, oh, he told me he was a dual credit student, right? That's why we brought up community college or whatever. Then so we met on what was this event called that they hosted? Because it was.
Oh, it was one of the like club recruiting events.
Yeah, and then I met Vanch and I started talking to him. He was like, if you want to talk to me, you can, but I have a meeting to go to in like 25 minutes. And I was like, what? A meeting? And so he just dragged me over here. I came through that door and I was like, what is this place? And then
And from day one, Mr. Eric Rangel, staff writer and photographer of The Observer, was born. And just saying, now podcast host too. And I mean, that took a lot of work, didn't it, Nick, trying to start the podcast? I mean, I know you guys started briefly before lockdown happened, before COVID started. Could you go into that?
Oh gosh, we had a group of students who really wanted to do a podcast in 2019, 2020, and we had a faculty member kind of on the other side of campus, Professor Rodriguez, who was looking for some people to run a podcast, like be the hosts, and he knew that we had a good reputation. I think I'd work with some of his colleagues, recruiting designers and stuff, so he knew of us and asked if some of our staff would like to be the host while he tried to set up a makeshift podcast studio kind of in his office in the H building. And that's how it got started. So we had several meetings, kind of like we did when we relaunched this several months ago. We had he had some different like space layouts, and was kind of moving around as he could find space. But the long story short is we did get a podcast. We did record, I think 3 or 4 episodes, and had another one scheduled. And then we found out whenever it was, I think that Thursday, sometime in March 2020, that we would not be coming back for a couple of weeks is what we were told. Like an extra week before spring break is my memory. And that kind of shut down our podcast initiative. So we were like, jumping into the water, and then we just
never came back up.
You guys never drowned. Came back up, yes. We drowned. So
when Vanch and I approached you with the podcast, how'd you feel?
I was excited because I knew at some point I wanted to do it again. Some of that is timing. Some of it's getting the equipment. Some of that's, of course, finding people who actually wanted to do it. When we came back in person last year, I think 1 or 2 people kind of mentioned it more on a casual basis. But look, we weren't on campus enough. We were still in masks. I hadn't made contact with anyone in that side of the school who could, help us with the equipment. So just kind of the timing wasn't right. But when you guys came along and mentioned you really wanted to do it and really take the reins as hosts, and then, of course, our audio editor, Indy, who ironically happened to start, I think, the same time you guys did at the same recruiting event. She had mentioned something about wanting to do it, and I'm like, it seems like I have a team here. And I don't even think at the time I knew it would be you 3 that are like running it, but I'm like, we have interest. And if you 3 are interested, I know others probably would be as well. So that's, I think, kind of gave me the drive to see if we can get this started.
And then a couple months later, San Francisco trip later, we kind of started the podcast. And I mean, it's successful so far. I mean, what's your thoughts on the podcast so far?
I'm super excited. And you did such a good job of, planning it. Once we got the equipment secured and we got it into our newsroom and you guys set it up, I think once all that was done, which is really some of the hardest parts, you guys have recorded, so many episodes. You have so many more you're planning on, that it's just, I'm surprised how quick it just became a thing that we do. And it doesn't always work out like that, like I could see us starting and stopping, but like the way you guys just kind of made it to be a weekly thing where you're going to record a couple every week, and that's just how it's going to be. I absolutely love it. I really like when students get into a passion project and then they actually see it through. And I want to give you guys a lot of credit for that because, this is something that you guys started. You can always say like you were the pioneers and you kind of got this ball rolling for us. And I hope we're doing this for years and years and years.
You're going to make us cry, man.
Know, right?
I mean, but besides the podcast, and which is a huge, I guess we can classify as accomplishment for the Observer, what else is a big Observer accomplishment?
I just think the consistency in which we put out our product is an accomplishment, and you guys have been around all year now. That to get a large group like we have now, get them all stories, get them photo ideas, And then for us to actually balance every other thing that we all do, work, school, people not getting back to us, to like put out that newsletter every couple of weeks with 10 or 12 stories consistently. I think people maybe who are not involved don't know how much time and effort goes into it, but as consistent as we are, that's what I'm most proud of.
And I guess while we're still on the accomplishments part, winning all these awards is a huge accomplishment. I mean, obviously, we can all agree on that here. But is there any future goals, any targets that you want to hit for the Observer?
What we have now, the staff we have now with the size and the enthusiasm, knowing that we're graduating about half that group, I want it to feel next year like it feels this year. It's not going to be the same people, not all the same people. It's not going to be the same personality-wise, but I want that enthusiasm to maintain. That's the tricky part. I was looking back at my old staffs, and like when I felt we really hit our stride about 2018, early 19. Like I adored those staff members, and they really liked each other, and they really worked hard. And when they left, when they graduated, because so many of them did that year, I was like really sad, honestly. Like as an instructor, I'm always sad when I lose students I like, but like that year, especially 2019, really hit me when that group left, and I haven't felt that we quite had the camaraderie and also the size as we did until this year. But I want to keep that. I want to see how long we can kind of ride this and see how long we can have a big staff who are as enthusiastic as this last year has been.
And I mean, you said you were sad when the 2019 staff kind of left. Do you think that feeling will arise when, for example, just as an example, when Eric and I, just
I
leave
knew you were going to bring that
stop,
up. I saw it from a mile away.
do you think you'll feel the same way when this staff maybe?
I've been trying not to think about like the end of the semester, but honestly, ever since spring break, it's really hit me. The folks who are going to be leaving, and you never know who's going to leave. So I only know the people who are graduating, so I know they're not going to be around. But people's schedules change, life circumstances change. I never anticipate anyone coming back, even if they tell me they are, because things do happen. And so I try not to. I want to say I try not to get too emotionally invested, but the truth is I really do.
Yeah.
So no, like I prefer not to think about when you guys are leaving. But certainly those thoughts do cross my mind, especially at this time of year, as I start to really look at the end of the semester and, you get all these emails about graduation and stuff like that. And I'm just like, ugh, it's hard letting students go who you work, because we work so close here. And we talk so often, and we text so often. When students leave, it's rough on me, honestly.
And I mean, it's clear to me that you're completely passionate about the Observer. You're willing to dedicate a bunch of time to it, willing to dedicate and kind of invest time into all of us, like staff writers and staff members, individually, to make sure that we grow. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes, and I think I always enjoyed this job when I was offered it, and I've only enjoyed it more as I've gone along and gotten more invested in the students. So it's definitely my thing, for lack of a better term. Like this is what I'm gonna look back on in my career, is probably more than anything is probably being an advisor.
So with this passion, why do you think people should join the Observer?
So there are so many reasons, and I want to focus on the ones for students who aren't necessarily looking for journalism or communications. Obviously, if you are, you should definitely join. Like that's sort of a given. But folks who want to meet interesting people, work on a team, have some purpose at the school. It's so hard at this school. We're a commuter school. You drive in, you go to class, you go to another class, you leave, you go to work. You do your homework, you repeat the next day. It's hard to meet people. It's hard to feel like you're involved here like you would be in a high school or you would be at a four-year school where you're living there. This gives you that purpose, and it really gives you some excellent hands-on training So if you're into talking to people and writing, if you're into photography, if you're into audio editing, or if you're into hosting, as you guys are, or putting together digital products like newsletters and social media and TikTok videos, it gives you some really cool hands-on portfolio building experience. What I really want to communicate to people is that regardless if you're going into communications or if you're going into something completely different, doing good work on something you're at least interested in and passionate about, like what we do at The Observer, it's a great experience, and it gives you some real world problem solving experience. And people who actually put in the time and energy to whatever they're doing for us, doing it well, it will serve you well no matter what career path it takes you. You'll gain that confidence because you've worked so hard here and you've proven yourself that you can accomplish something.
And I completely agree with that. I mean, with The Observer, I think I've developed more of a skill set in terms of journalism, photography, especially, and it has given me the opportunity to become a podcast host with Eric and to interview you and other guests as well. It's a huge, I guess, thing I'm thankful for.
Brought a special treat. Would you like to hear it?
A special treat?
I did. I brought one of your fellow staff members, Jenna, who plays the guitar, and I thought it'd be cool to end this episode by hearing her play a piece for us.
Surprise, it's me. I'm Jenna Mckee, and it's my first and last semester here at The Observer. I wish I would have joined earlier, but I took the journalism class with Nick and ended up liking the experience and wanting to write more, and they told me not to say this, but I was kind of bullied into joining, but but it's really been a great experience. I've got to do a lot of cool things, like go to conferences and stuff, so I'm just happy to be here. And I've also played guitar since 7th grade, which is a long time, so yeah.
So what are you going to be playing?
Right.
I'm going to be playing Everlong by the FooFighters, just a small snippet, not the whole thing, because it would suck if it was the entirety of the guitar part without singing, so just a snippet.
Got it.
Hey.
That was a wonderful performance.
It really was.
I tried my best. I'm playing it at my guitar recital, so I think music's a great way to just connect to people, rather like whether it's listening or playing it, it builds community, which is why I love it so much.
Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and actually taking the time out of your day to play a little bit of Everlong for us. Thank you to Nick as well for surprising us.
Thank you guys.
And for actually helping us with the podcast, with the Observer. Like, from all of us at the Observer, we thank you because you're kind of the one running the meetings. I mean, seriously. And, you know, but also a big thanks to our listeners and a huge thanks to Indy for editing today's episode. And to learn more about the Observer and to see our work, make sure to visit elginobserver.com and make sure to follow us on Instagram at Observer Newspaper and on TikTok at Elgin Observer. Until next time, I'm Vanch and that's Eric, and we'll see you next time.